one of the things that we wanted to do at this time was talk about the yellow candles and a couple of other things. And unfortunately, anti-Semitism, as we know, hasn't gone away. As a matter of fact, it's really heating up very, very quickly. Last year, Pittsburgh, and look around the room, everyone wearing the shirts. I think it shocked us. I think it shocked us as a community, and it really had a profound impact on us all. Several of you, many of us, talking about security. We never talked about security before. It's not to this extent. At LDI, a few weeks after Pittsburgh, Irwin Harris spoke to us. It really had quite an impact on myself and everyone who was there. I actually invited Irwin to our Brotherhood Shabbat this past spring. And I asked him if he would share some words with us today. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Irwin Harris from the Tree of Life Synagogue of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Irwin.
Thank you. And thank you to the convention committee for reaching out and asking me to speak. To the members of the Tri-State region, thank you. There are just too many to thank individually. Just know that each of you has touched our hearts. To anyone who has sent a check, all of which are very generous, our request is and has been to place donor intent in the memo line and the note or letter. We are going through an audit right now to make sure we have everything where it's supposed to go. Friends from the FJMC, many of you here that have been also my mentors, to each and every one of you for attending this FJMC 90 convention and wearing your STH shirts. Notice I refer to them as STH because there's a word on there that I've pledged not to say except in certain situations. That word hate is the word that causes days like October 27th. Please join us in eradicating that word from your vocabulary as we go forward. To quote a talk from our Rabbi Chazan, Jeffrey Myers, that he gave a few months back, Blanche Dubois utters the famous line in Tennessee Williams' A Streetcar Named Desire. I've always depended upon the kindness of strangers. With the utmost respect for Tennessee Williams, I'm going to revise these words to state, I continue to be uplifted by the kindness of people. Wherever I go, people come up to greet me, express kind words, and ask how I and we're doing. This has happened to me many times here in Toronto. Not that any of you are really strangers, but so many of you have reached out in so many different ways, it's impossible to thank each and every one of you individually. I'm grateful for your concerns and questions. You may ask, maybe David Kravitz's or somebody from another city, what's with a Penguins jersey? I thought he had an STH shirt on at breakfast. I do, it's underneath. But on October 30th, Penguins played a game wearing their version of the STH in the form of a patch on their uniform. Proceeds of the auction went to the Jewish Federation in Pittsburgh. Every sports team in Pittsburgh that was playing a season at that point participated in one way or another with something. And then there were 12. On April 27th, the Chabad of Poway was attacked. And Lori Gilbert Kay became the latest martyr. May her memory and the memories of the 11 martyrs in Pittsburgh always be for a blessing. You see, we have been unwillingly inducted into a club to which no one wants to belong. Now that we are a member, we must step up and support our neighbors, allies, and other minorities, communities, like they have supported us. We do not want you, any one of you in this room, to join this club. And I would love to hang a close sign on this club. 8 days ago, we hit the 8-month mark since the shooting at my synagogue building. I purposely mention it this way as Tree of Life became the moniker that day, and it still is. There were, however, 3 separate congregations in the building worshiping that morning. My congregation, Tree of Life or La Simcha, New Light Congregation, another conservative congregation, and Congregation Dor Hadash, which is a Reconstructionist congregation. The building is known as the Tree of Life building. Our congregation is 155 years old and one of the oldest conservative congregations in the country. We have been on the corner of Wilkins and Shady since the original building's dedication in 1952. We, as many conservative congregations, are always looking for ways to fill the holes in the budget, and we chose to develop a metropolitan model on the site, which is how the other 2 congregations arrived in the building. This is always known as the new normal. On October 27th, this was all shattered when a gunman, whose name I refuse to mention, as he has had more than enough publicity, entered our building around 9:45. He had one intention, and that was to kill all Jews. Services had or were about to begin in all 3 congregations when gunfire erupted. Without going into many details, he murdered 11 of my friends, wounded 2 congregants, and 4 police officers. While this is always mentioned, as it should be, I want to let you know that 9 survivors came out physically unharmed. This can be attributed directly to one thing, and that's active shooter training. If you are a school teacher, you know it as ALICE, which stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. It is also done in workplaces, and we have a member of the KIO region who was at work in the building where there was an active shooting. Unfortunately, in today's world, as we all are aware, it could be a church, synagogue, mosque. Active shooter training saved lives that fateful morning. At Tree of Life or La Simcha, we held active shooter training, which was our 2nd or 3rd time in the building, 4 days before Erev Rosh Hashanah. It was for board members, ushers, greeters, and we invited the other 2 congregations. If your house of worship has not gone through it, get it. If your workplace hasn't, inquire how to get it. Schools do this on a regular basis. A survivor, a teacher, a good friend of mine, upon returning to school, around 2 weeks later, told his students, "You guys always think that Alice is funny." He then said, "It saved my life." As I mentioned, services began at 9:45. A short time later, a noise was heard that was been described as a coat rack being knocked over. Shortly after, more noise was detected and identified as gunshots. Rabbi Myers worked to guide people to safety. People in our chapel went to different spaces and got themselves safe. When Rabbi Myers was safe, he phoned the police at 9:52. A rabbi with a phone that's on Shabbat. You see, he was taken aside during one of the trainings and basically told he needs to have it on him and on for emergencies and safety. Zone officers arrived at the synagogue at 9:56, and by the way, my phone is never off. It may be on Do Not Disturb. Rabbi Myers is the only person who is not family in my favorites, so he can come through, because he called me on Shabbat, the day of Poway, because we wanted to plan some things. The zone officers arrived at 9:56. The shooter was exiting the building, and they engaged him. Both officers were wounded. They took the gunman on knowing they were wearing light body armor and also were outgunned. They forced him back into the building, and he fled upstairs in the synagogue. By this time, backup was arriving, the fire department, officers from other zones in the city, and from across Allegheny County, SWAT officers, many in their personal vehicles, emergency doctors and nurses, along with ambulances from the city and region. Also arriving were City of Pittsburgh public safety officials. They locked down the area. Upon arrival, SWAT got organized by setting up sniper positions in the homes directly across the street. They pounded on a few doors. At the same time, they entered the building. Something I learned that day is that in Pittsburgh and some other cities, that is when SWAT sends a team into the building, an emergency medical team enters with them. 2 units, 2 medical teams. As SWAT confirmed the shooter's position and went up to the 3rd floor, an emergency medical team was setting up a triage treatment area on a 2nd floor landing. When the confirmation that the gunman was isolated, it gave EMTs the opportunity to enter the building with cover and extract the wounded. Being able to do so saved lives. In the ensuing gun battle, 2 SWAT officers were wounded. It was during the gun battle that the gunman was wounded and immediately said, "I'm surrendering, I'm coming out," and he was taken into custody. The wounded were taken to 3 separate hospitals, depending on the severity of their injuries. Security was tight at all 3 hospitals, but the tightest at Allegheny General, where the gunman was taken. In the emergency room when the gunman arrived, he was shouting, "I want to kill all the Jews," according to the hospital's president, Dr. Jeffrey Cohen, a member of my congregation. If the gunman only knew then about the identity of the team tasked with keeping him alive. At least 3 of the doctors and nurses who cared for the gunman at Allegheny General were Jewish. According to Dr. Cohen is, that was a quote from Dr. Cohen. Dr. Cohen is not only a member of the congregation, but lives just down the street on Wilkins Avenue and heard the gunshots and events as they unfolded. Medical professionals take an oath to treat people no matter who they are or what they have done, and it was mentioned in the video we saw. The gunman's main nurse is a young man who 32 years ago, this last month, went on our honeymoon with us. His father is the rabbi who married Rose and I. 2 days later, we all went to Israel with a trip from Temple Emmanuel in Pittsburgh, different than the one in Newton. As all of this chaos was occurring, the elected officials showed up. This included the mayor of the city, the chief executive of the county, and the governor. They were joined by other officials on the city, state, county, and federal level. Those who were in election battles stood side by side, ignoring that at that very moment, had regular programming been on television, they would have been slamming each other with their commercials. The media were on the scene to do their jobs. Although polite, they were relentless. In the first 3 days, I probably received 60 to 70 different contacts. I was fortunate that Rose, who is here today, and our daughter, who lives in New York City, were home to handle them for me. All got the same line, no comment. As I was at the time secretary of the congregation, I was in touch with our synagogue president and suggested that we contact the board and tell them not to speak to the media or make any comments. I was approached twice on the street by the media. On Sunday morning, I encountered a woman outside my home after I came home from shul, not at my building, but at another. She identified herself as ABC News, Good Morning America. My daughter Samantha came outside, rescued me, and got her information. Except for the FJMC LDI in November and Temple Emmanuel in Newton, who brought me in for their men's club Shabbat, this is one of the few times I've spoken to a group since October 27th. The Jewish community and the entire community immediately sprung into action. The Federation and the JCC worked together to have a place for those of us who were affected. Synagogues opened their doors. A spontaneous prayer vigil organized by high school students on social media took place at the corner of Forbes and Murray, one of the most famous corners in Squirrel Hill. The JCC was basically turned their building over to the affected synagogues on that Saturday morning. This was a meeting place for those who wanted to be together. It also served as the place for the notification of next of kin. You couldn't get in to the JCC or their parking lot without identification, and the lot was reserved for affected families and congregants. The Jewish Federation immediately arranged for heightened security for our facilities, along with manpower to do this. This procedure remains in place today. On Monday morning, I met the president and our temporary controller. We opened bank accounts for the victims and the synagogue. We knew we would need to have separate accounting for everything. We don't have time this morning to get into all the rules that we operate under. We had at that point absolutely no access to our building as it was a crime scene. Our server was inside the building. From the high holidays, I had the only accessible membership list available to use. I went home, retrieved it, and then met the president, one of the vice presidents, the temporary controller, and our only administrative employee at that point in time at the JCC. One of our VPs is a public safety officer with the city. He was told by the mayor's office that a memo went out to all city departments. It stated that if Alan asked for anything, it was to be provided, no questions asked. We all had our responsibilities. Egos didn't prevail because we checked them at the door. I was asked to work with law enforcement, mainly the FBI, and was tasked to put a document together that gave all of the funeral information. I had times of visitation, services, location of funeral, shivas, and if needed, the address of family members whose homes needed protected. We had 11 deaths, 9 services as 2 brothers, and there were 2 that were married. And that day, and that all these funerals took place over a 4-day period. I made it to some part of 10 of the 11 funerals, and Rose was with me. Friday afternoon at Rose Mallinger's funeral, the lead FBI agent said to me that he's not sure how we did it, but everything was so much smoother than they had expected. Hever Kadisha did their job quietly. They were with the bodies in the synagogue when the FBI released the dead, and they were accompanied to the medical examiner and to the funeral homes. People came from out of town to help the funeral homes. One of the funeral homes handled 9 of the victims. When the FBI did the initial release of the building, Hever Kadisha brought 36 people who dressed in full hazmat suits into our synagogue for 36 hours. Last month, the 2 burial societies in Pittsburgh traveled to the 17th annual North American Hever Kadisha and Jewish Cemetery Conference in Colorado. Although there are many fascinating parts of the article that appeared in the Pittsburgh Jewish Chronicle on June the 19th, the one part I want to quote and suggest to you is from Malka Frank. The purpose of their trip was to deliver a call for preparedness. She said, "We were suggesting that they go back to their synagogue and talk with their caring committee or rabbi or Hever members and work through a plan to deal with issues should it ever happen. To discuss with the congregational framework, death and traditional Jewish practices, and to forge relationships with other Jewish communal organizations, like we did. So people already had a tradition of working together. Yes, a plan. Having part of one or all of one in place helped our community to get through this impossible task. Everyone worked together because they were comfortable with each other. Please, when you go home, make sure that your communities do also. On October 30th, President Trump came to Pittsburgh to visit the site. There were protests a couple of blocks away. Rabbi Myers welcomed him to the synagogue. The synagogue is Rabbi Myers' tent, and as it is, he welcomes everyone. They spoke privately in an undamaged area of the building, and they spent private time together. Rabbi Myers has spoken about a portion of the conversation, and he has kept parts of it private. In the aftermath of this visit, you can only imagine the hatred, I'm sorry, it's a word I'm reluctantly using, that was directed at Rabbi Myers. When Rabbi Myers saw what was arriving, he forbid everyone, executive officers, his family, from opening the mail addressed to him. Some of these pieces immediately went into a Ziploc bag and was given to our Federation security person. Some of the items went to the FBI for whatever action was indicated. Road of Shalom, a founding member of the Reform Movement, immediately offered us a chapel, a mailroom, and an office for our rabbi. We now also have an office for our newly hired executive director. You see, we accomplished everything without one, as our former executive director resigned 4 months before 10/27. We remain at Road of Shalom to this date, and this is our new normal. When we were set up in our temporary office, and after our mail was scanned by postal inspectors, the post office arrived to our temporary office and deliver our mail in a truck. You see, in the first 2 to 3 weeks after October 27th, between letters, parcels, packages, etc., there was somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 pieces. We and our 2 partner congregations have been the recipient of so much love, goodwill, and support. We must always remember to express gratitude. The Muslim community did a fundraiser and quickly surpassed their goal of $150,000. This money was immediately transferred into the synagogue account to be used for burial expenses and medical bills. A total of $236,000 was raised. A GoFundMe page was started that raised $1.2 million. This is just a couple of the examples of the world's generosity. Not only have monetary donations arrived in all forms, $3 from a child, which was his allowance. 2 letters and checks of all sizes. We are also receiving beautiful pieces of art, one of which is by Deborah Wansberg from Canada. I'm having trouble remembering the new name of the region. We received handmade shawls, blankets, among other things. Wristbands. I don't know where these came from, but we have them. 7 months after Parkland, 2 of the congregations have made things for us. This one, here we go. This one is from a congregation called Tikva in Parkland, Florida, 9 short months after their tragedy. The community reached out to the newest member of the club. On the card it says, "Let the sun shine through the darkness from Parkland to Pittsburgh." Continually, we receive different things. This was given to me this morning by Ben Amaninia, I'm sorry if I've mispronounced it, from the Western region in Los Angeles. They were in Pittsburgh, and he went to the building, as many do. If anybody is coming to Pittsburgh, call me if I can. I'll meet you there and show you different things. The Jewish Federation of Pittsburgh distributed $6.3 million in late February. Of that, $950,000 went to grants to support the congregations and community. This included all 3 congregation and seed funds for memorialization, commemoration, and education for community healing and safety. That left $5.4 million. Of that, payments to the family of those killed and seriously wounded worshipers got $4,367,000. Payments to individuals trapped in the building, $437,000. Payments to individuals on the premises during the attack, $48,528. Payments to physically injured police officers, $500,000. Yes, to the police officers. Traditionally throughout the world, police officers have usually looked the other way. Our police officers went in and did their jobs. When we have finished a self-imposed audit, our plan is to follow the same percentages as with the formula from the Federation. Makeshift memorial flowers, cards, letters, candles, and so many other things grew outside of our building. We had to be very delicately dismantle it as the weather was going into freeze and thaw cycles. We separated the flowers, which were composted, from the memorial items. The rest were brought inside the building to be preserved and eventually transferred to the Raw Jewish Archives and the Heinz History Center in Pittsburgh. For Hanukkah, it was determined that we would not allow ourselves to be afraid of our past or our future. To that end, we were given an outside electric Hanukkah and lit it at the corner of Wilkins and Shady. The surrounding streets were shut down and we had around 1,000 people in attendance. We also light our stained glass windows from the inside every single night. This symbolizes that although right now the building is not a prayerful place, we will restore it so that it becomes a prayerful place once again. We will not let the light go out. Without all of the decisions and renovations that are needed, it is estimated at this point it'll be another 18 to 24 months before we're in the building. We're going through a long process, want to do it right. I want to mention a couple other things as a result of October 27th. I am no longer secretary as I've become a vice president, placing myself in line to become president. Almost every single week, we have guests from all over the world. Robert Kraft, who was mentioned earlier, is a member of Temple Emmanuel in Newton, and his son Jonathan and a couple other team executives joined us on December the 15th for our first Simcha since October 27th. We had a visit from some cadets and at West Point. Rabbi Myers has put together a sheet that we use to hand out, which I don't have easily accessible this minute, so people who are not Jewish can understand the service. When Robert Kraft was there, he gave 4 tickets to the bar mitzvah family and 6 tickets to Rabbi Myers for the game the following day, which was New England and Pittsburgh. Because Rabbi Myers cannot participate in every request, we've set up an ambassadors bureau. There are 5 groups. You can be a silent representative, a greeter, a gift recipient, a media contact, or a featured speaker. These are not limited to Pittsburgh events. We have had members go to many states, including Texas and New York. Our building is not a prayerful place. As a result, since December, when we met as a ritual committee, we have looked at over 20 places, none of which could fit what we needed. Calvary Episcopal Church, 1 mile from our building, reached out and offered us their space. At our first meeting, Reverend Jensen stated they planned to cover any religious symbols with cloth while we had our services. Rabbi Myers and our ritual chair have both signed off on the space, and that is where we will have high holidays this year. The congregants of Tree of Life World of Simcha are dedicated to fulfilling the Rabbi's vision by engaging in actions in support of social justice and the eradication of prejudice and discrimination. 2 of the victims, David and Cecil Rosenthal, were born with Fragile X syndrome, which is a genetic disorder. They lived in a group home owned by Achieva. The Rosenthal family and Achieva have begun a Facebook group called Love Like the Boys. The movement is to do random acts of kindness. Be committed to making your community a better place, making a stranger's day. Be creative, be passionate, be stronger than that word. These are available and can be downloaded from the internet. Joyce Feinberg was a widow and mother of 2 and also a grandmother. This is a congregant you wish you could clone. If you asked her for something, she was there. She wanted to solve issues. If you knew Joyce was in town, you could count on her 7 days a week. As a very active member of the Sisterhood Book Club, they have renamed it the Joyce Feinberg Book Club. Joyce's son Howard is a member of Olaf Tikva Men's Club in the Seaboard region. Howard's wife Marnie started 2 for Seder. Very successful this year. We're hoping to build on it for next. Raise a glass to all of our fallen and never forget. Get with me, or I think it's Paul Kaplan. He'll be glad to help you also. I've also had the honor of spending time twice with Pastor Manning from Charleston, South Carolina, and the imam, one of the imams from New Zealand. Club members, I don't want any more. A breathtaking tour cover was commissioned by the Cantors Assembly. It was presented on April 30th. It's traveling the country, maybe it's been here. While we continue to mourn our lost congregants, we act decisively to honor them, their memories by healing, growing, and strengthening the congregation they love so much. Although I am not here for fundraising purposes, when asked, reconstruction of the building is paramount. Finally, we not only condemn and vow to fight against anti-Semitism, we are dedicated to the eradication of all forms of prejudice, discrimination, hatred directed at all minority populations. Tolerance is good, but remember, acceptance is the better choice. Thank you.
That was the same weekend as the joint KAO and Tri-State retreat. And while we were at a center just about 60 miles away or so,
In Wheeling,
Irwin, you were supposed to be there, but he didn't get there obviously. And we were getting, Warren was there, and Warren kept telling us what was going on. He was getting texts in from their system. So it was quite an eventful weekend, and we got to thank Irwin for being here and presenting this to us.
it was the Irwin News Network on Shabbat.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can we, Bob Weinstein and Phylis, Bob and Philip Weinstein are here. Greg, the New Yellow Candle Committee, can you come up here, please?
When this is over, we're all going to get together for a picture if you have the shirt on.
So this morning, we've been talking about yellow candles and in the periphery, the Holocaust and hate. Sorry, Irwin. And as you all know, we've been running the Yellow Candle program, which, as Rabbi Sugarman mentioned last night, was something that we've developed as an organization, particularly in Toronto and in Peabody, Massachusetts, and worked with the clubs and made it, gentleman at the back, and made it our signature program. And the program itself runs very well because we have a great group of volunteers. But the program also needs somebody in the background to do the work. And Bob Weinstein took on the job, how many years ago, Bob? About 20 years ago. And Bob and I worked together. I was kind of Yellow Candle chairman for a little while. We worked together, and Bob has been the guy who's made sure that you get your candles on time. And Bob and Phylis run this out of their office in their house in Scottsdale. It's a lovely place, and Phylis makes great chicken. And I love going to dinner there. And the best part about it is that they ran it so well. It just ran by itself, it seemed to us. But we know that the background was that the two of these people, these dynamos in front of us, did such a wonderful job putting this candle program together. It was amazing. They've decided it's time to retire. I think I'm not sure why. They seem to be, they could probably go for another 20 years. But they've decided it's time, and it's great that they're here with us today. We want to thank them for all of the hard work that they put in, for all of the time that they've answered the phone before 11 o'clock Eastern time, because it's before 9 o'clock in Phoenix, whatever time it is, whatever place else, who cares. But Bob and Phylis are great to work with, we all know that, and we're just so happy that they're here with us today. We're honoring them. Bob is known as Colonel Candle, and we've got John Medwood here with us today.
I'm truly honored to have the privilege of introducing to all of you the 2019 FJMC Yasher Koach awardee. I am privileged to have known our Yasher Koach awardee for over 30 years and having been his #2 son-in-law for 29 plus years. Like Avis, I try harder. If there's a passion for Bob Weinstein, affectionately called Colonel Candle, that passion is the FJMC and its Shoah Yellow Candle program. It was that passion, frankly, that got me involved in the FJMC, and that led me to become a club president for 3 separate stints at 2 synagogues in 2 states of the Western region, as well as becoming a Western region board member. For more than 20 years, Bob Weinstein has been a tireless administrator for the Shoah Yellow Candle program, both ordering and distributing the candles and the ancillary items, such as plastic bags or individual bulk mailboxes, throughout the United States and Canada. And has been even more, and he has even been somewhat involved in candles being shipped across the pond to the United Kingdom. One of the greatest successes at the club level for Bob was to meet with the Archdiocese of Phoenix and getting them to commit to the Shoah Yellow Candle program through their parishes. This ongoing relationship and participation by the Archdiocese of Phoenix has been going on for many years. Perhaps an even more challenging success was to convince Chabad of Arizona to participate and commit to this conservative majority program. And Bob has spearheaded outreach to Reformed congregations as well. If anyone can bridge the great theological divide between the Archdiocese of Phoenix, Chabad of Arizona, and the Reformed congregational communities, while keeping those relationships strong and ongoing, it is Bob Weinstein. Bob has been involved with Men's Club and the FJMC for 55 years. Think about that for a moment. Lyndon Johnson was president of the United States. The Beatles were just starting out, and very few of us owned color TVs. Seatbelts were still an option on new cars at the time, and all of us used rotary phones. Times sure have changed, but like a Timex watch, Bob has taken a licking at times, but keeps on ticking. Bob has been a Men's Club president, congregational president, a synagogue board member, an FJMC Western Region board member, and has been involved with the Shoah Yellow Candle program since 1992. His wife, Phylis, has been active in sisterhood for many years. She has been a sisterhood president, gift shop manager, and Torah Fund chairperson. Bob has been married to Phylis for 63 years, and please God, it will be 64 years on October the 30th. They have 3 daughters, 2 sons, the husbands of their daughters, 11 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. Both Bob and Phylis have made their involvement in synagogue life a priority and passion. For the past 17 years, they have both been administrating the Yellow Candle program and responsible for the purchasing of candles, boxes, and bags, as well as the accounting and revenue of expenses. In addition to the responsibilities mentioned earlier, Bob has taken on, has been also responsible for the logistics of the program, including distribution of candles to the warehouses throughout North America for shipment. Additionally, Bob processes all orders and maintains records of sales, while Phylis maintains all of the computerized records and spreadsheets for the program. Although Bob and Phylis are retiring from the national Shoah Candle program and their responsibilities, they will continue to be working with the Shoah Yellow Candle program on a club and regional basis with Or Zion congregation in Scottsdale, Arizona, and the Western region of the FJMC. It is my pleasure to present the 2019 Yasha Award to Colonel Y.H. Candle, more commonly known as Robert Bob Weinstein.
Yasher Koach to Bob, and also Yasher Koach to the Tri-State Region for sponsoring this morning's events. Thank you, Irwin.
To the people who are taking my job, my phone is, I'm just as far away from the phone as I told them. But I didn't tell them one thing. I'm changing my phone number.
Thank everybody for your support of the Yellow Candle program, for being here today, for honoring Colonel Candle, and to encourage those for us to remember that the candles are to share a light of remembrance on everybody, and to continue to support the program. And thank you very much.